Got two different examples of solving problems on the back here, so I want to review. Notice the difference between the two. This one has x squared something x equals a number. This one has just some quantity squared plus a number times a number equals something. So we're going to solve these two very differently. The first one, since it's almost in standard form. In fact, I can write it in standard form by subtracting 8 from both sides. And when I write it in standard form, since this equals 0, I know that I can solve. If I can find the two things that multiply together to get 0 for an answer, then I can figure out what x is. So I'm going to try to factor this one. I know that to get 5x squared, I need to have 5x and x. And then I'm going to think of my list of factors for the number 8, because the two numbers that go here should multiply to give me 8. So I'm either going to choose 1 times 8 or 2 times 4. And I have to try to think of the numbers that when I multiply this times this and this times this, I get 18. So I'm going to put a 4 in this spot and a 2 in this spot, because this gives me 20x and this gives me 2x. And positive 20x subtract 2x gives me positive 18. And also negative 2 times positive 4 gives me negative 8. So now what I've got are two factors. This times this equals 0. And I know that when you multiply and get 0 for an answer, that one of the two factors must be 0. So either 5x minus 2 equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. So 5x equals 2, or x equals 2/5, or x equals negative 4. I call these the solutions. Notice there's two solutions because I have an x squared in the problem. On this side, I want to get x by itself. I don't want to multiply this out because it may not be one where I get good, clean answers. So I'm going to start by undoing this by subtracting 8 from both sides. So negative 4 times x plus 9 squared equals 32 minus 8, which is 24. Then, since this says 4 times this, I'm going to get rid of the 4. I have to get rid of the 4 before this because we do PEMDAS in reverse order. So x plus 9 squared equals negative 6. Now, to get x by itself, I have to square root both sides. And remember, when we square root both sides, we get positive and negative. And then I notice I have a negative underneath the radical. And so to fix that, I'm going to bring an I outside the radical because the square root of negative 1 is I. 6, I can't reduce that anymore or simplify because there's not a perfect square under this radical. So the next thing I'm going to do is subtract 9 from both sides. So I get x equals negative 9 plus or minus I square root 6. So even if I would have from the very beginning tried to multiply this out, I wouldn't have wanted to solve that way because notice this one gets an imaginary answer, and when we factor, we don't get imaginary answers.